Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Inside Pima County with Supervisor Rex Scott. I am Supervisor Rex Scott, and I'm very honored to be joined today by Ms. Jen Darland. Ms. Darland is the head of our Office of Housing Opportunities and Homeless Solutions. We've known each other for a long time, and very grateful that I get the chance to work with her in Pima County. How you doing today, Jen?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Excellent.
Great.
Excellent. And wanted to find out if we could kick it off by you telling us how this office that you head up got started. What was the impetus for that?
Sure. In December of 2023, the county administrator established the Office of Housing Opportunities and Homeless Solutions for the intent purpose of centralizing information on all of the various different programming that the county administers in response to at-risk, vulnerable, and homeless populations, both directly and in collaborative partnership with nonprofit agencies, regional partners, including our local continuum of care, and our jurisdictional partners, chiefly the city of Tucson.
Just so that everybody understands the terminology that
Right.
we are using, what is the local continuum of care?
The local continuum of care is a HUD designated body that is annually responsible for the annual competition, otherwise known as the Notice of Funding Opportunity. This is federal funding that is released to communities to address housing and services for homeless populations. Locally, here, it's the Tucson Pima Collaboration to End Homelessness. It is made up of jurisdictional partners, the city of Tucson and Pima County. We have staffing roles, and we also are on the board. And nonprofit agencies, those would be Our Family Services, Primavera, the Veterans Association, and also working with our faith-based groups too. So it is a nonprofit. It isn't even officially a nonprofit. It's just a gathering of those organizations and agencies that collectively are working together to address homelessness. And most of the programming that they administer is funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
And we both know this, but again, for our listeners slash viewers, what is the role of the county within the local continuum of care, and what is the role of the city of Tucson?
That's a great question. So, Pima County is what is called the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS lead, meaning the county has been elected by the continuum of care to provide the data support over the next 5 years. The data associated with any of the projects funded by HUD, we're talking housing projects, we're talking outreach programs, even some shelter programs. We administer the data. The city of Tucson is the continuum of care project lead team. They are the body that gathers the continuum of care. They conduct the annual competition. They staff the continuum of care board, and they and convene the committees. Also, the city of Tucson facilitates the role of the continuum of care lead, which is the strategic plan that they have to do every 5 years, and so they're doing that currently. So their job is to really sort of help bring together more public awareness and bring together the body that is a continuum of care and facilitate the work on their behalf.
And heading up the Office of Housing Opportunities and Homeless Solutions, you are doubtless our point person with the local continuum of care. When the office was formed by County Administrator Lesher, what were some of the principles or values that she asked and that the board affirmed would guide the work of your department?
So essentially, she established 5 priorities that would guide the work. And those 5 priorities in brief were to inventory the county and partner programming for at-risk and homeless individuals, to describe and illustrate how services are accessed and delivered, also to develop a county and public facing communications on those programs, services, and our response for vulnerable and at-risk populations. Also, to develop a strategic and continuous improvement plan that would ensure that all of our programming is responsive and equitably distributed, as well as, and finally, the fifth priority is to develop a means of tracking the efficacy of those programs.
And something that I really appreciate about your reports to the board, which you deliver once a month,
Yes.
is that you always ground your each report in one or more of those priorities.
Yes, absolutely.
And I appreciate that not just as a supervisor, but as a former educator, because they're almost like learning objectives when she comes in and talks to the
And
board.
it was your recommendation, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that for
Wish I
on
could take
film.
credit for it, but no, you that was your recommendation. It was very helpful too in the grounding of those monthly updates. And again, it keeps all of the work aligned with the 5 establishing priorities that the county administrator set forth.
Well, thank you again. Um, Walk us through, if you can, what those priorities look like in action and how they impact your work on both a daily and ongoing basis.
So, at the very simplest level, it has been forming a web page that centralizes information on all of the county programming and uh, partner programs. It also helps to be a repository for frequently asked questions as well as other initiatives that the county is leading. For example, the work that we're doing on the Regional Affordable Housing Commission, right? So there are links within this page that direct visitors to other programs that are also being facilitated by the county that are addressing a very real and present need with respect to affordable housing. Additionally, it's a landing page for individuals to learn how to report an encampment, as well as it provides some information, for example, the median signs, right? Throughout the areas of unincorporated Pima County where there is a median sign that says, say, no to panhandling, but yes to agencies supporting at-risk populations, the webpage now provides some language on where to direct those dollars, right? So we recommend that individuals reach out to the Community Foundation of Southern Arizona, which is a funding agency that supports a number of nonprofits doing really important work in our community. Uh, and as you had mentioned, another way that this also looks in action is the monthly updates to the board, right? To provide timely information to the board at the time when policymaking could be important or necessary, to inform on some of the strategies underway, as well as emerging trends that we're seeing. For example, the request that you put forward in May of this year to evaluate how we could get to 1,300 additional shelter beds. That led to the evaluation of what's happening across the country, addressing homelessness and what were some emerging trends that could come back to the board and share how we are also mirroring some of that trend as well, again with our investment in affordable housing development. It also looks like the evaluation of our response to homelessness, right? So chiefly that's going to be the county's encampment protocol that is led by the Regional Flood Control District. It is essentially a land management plan when we have an encampment that falls on county land or in the unincorporated spaces. It guides for the direction of a response that leads with humanitarian services first. It also calls for the facilitation of law enforcement if necessary when we encounter individuals who are persistently encamped in a space and persistently trespassing in that area.
And let's talk about that protocol for a second, because you mentioned that the first point of contact is staff within our regional flood control
Yeah.
district. You and I know why that is the case, but speak to why they are the initial point of contact, and talk about some of the other departments that get involved when we get a report of a homeless encampment on county property.
Absolutely. So just to set the table here a little bit, the protocol was established in 2015. So we've had it for over a decade. But over the course of that procedure, we have consistently seen and persistently seen that when there is an encampment established, it is largely being established in a waterway or a channel within the Regional Flood Control District Maintenance Authority. So overall, as a region, there may be 500 reports submitted in any given month. Pima County will have assigned roughly about 10% of those, right? And of that 10%, those that are verified as being an encampment on a county asset, over 60% of the time it's going to be in a waterway or a channel. These are dynamic spaces both in wet and dry climate, and we have to be thoughtful about the risk of the individuals in that space as well as the community at large. So we always it's one of the reasons why it's been grounded with a response to make that's facilitated by that district. It has been very helpful to have them be the central lead, right? Again, the predominant number of encampments will fall in their area of effort, but they also have established some really great practices in terms of being responsive. They are very responsive. They are very helpful to constituents as well at ways to mitigate some of the impacts of encampments that or mitigate against having them resettle in that space. We do know that there is a footprint that does extend to other county departments as well. So it is, if it's not the Regional Flood Control District, it will be our Department of Transportation. It will also be our Keno Sports Complex, our Conservation Land and Resources Department, as well as our parks, right? So the Parks Department that manages all of the parks as well as the Chuck Huckleberry Loop. So we have a huge land managing set of colleagues in this space. But again, the data show that the Regional Flood Control District is the most chiefly impacted by repeated encampments. So it has been easy, or it's been a very oh it's been a very strategic decision to make sure that we centralize that response with that department.
And we, as you said, and this is not only the practice of your department and all of county staff, it's direction from the board as well. You lead with humanitarian assistance because we want to get to the root causes of why somebody is living in a homeless encampment. But the reality is that sometimes we're dealing with people who are suffering from addiction and substance abuse, people who have mental health issues, and there might even be people who are uh, in other areas breaking the law. So how do we address those issues of addiction and abuse? And if there's lawlessness, how's the sheriff's department become involved?
It's a great question. So, since the inception of the protocol, it's always led with humanitarian services ahead of cleanup. So, that's always been part of the process to always make an earnest effort to connect individuals to resources and care. So, in our attempts to connect those individuals with resources, we do suggest everything from shelter to connections to detox or treatment. We do look to see if they're already connected with a behavioral health provider or any other items that they may need. It's meant to be a conversation with the individual. What is it that you need right now that can help you get to the next step that would end your housing instability? Right? It takes a series of conversations, and sometimes it isn't always successful. We also know, right, that the status of homelessness isn't in and of itself a criminal offense, right? The lack of having a place to sleep is not in and of itself a criminal offense. However, there are behaviors that can become more acute in those areas of unsheltered homelessness. And so, in that space, the protocol again identifies notifying and communication with law enforcement, whether it's the Pima County Sheriff's Department for any encampment within the unincorporated space. And when we have to attend to an encampment that's on a county parcel or land inside an incorporated jurisdiction,
Mm.
our regional flood control district, that team reaches out to the law enforcement agency within the incorporated jurisdiction in which our land asset resides. And so it is always a communication to let them know we are aware of this encampment. We're going to proceed to post a 72-hour notice to vacate. We're making you aware. And that way, if anything should need a quick response, they have situational awareness to be available and on site. We have found over the iteration of this that in some areas where it is more persistently a behavior versus a status choice, the partnership with our law enforcement officers is so critical because land managers are not deputized to enter. They're not social workers, and they're also not law enforcement officers. And so having law enforcement be supportive of their ability to facilitate their responsibilities in maintaining that space is so incredibly important to their work.
I appreciate that you talked about our systemic response to encampment reports, the fact that we work with law enforcement from other jurisdictions, and we work with partner agencies in the private sector and with other jurisdictions. Ever since, both during and after the pandemic, we've noticed a spike
Yep.
in homeless numbers uh, around Pima County. Uh, what does that data tell us about the current state of homelessness in the county?
So we've seen a significant increase of about, I believe it's about 184% in homelessness overall since the pandemic. We aren't necessarily seeing an overall rise from 2020. I'm sorry, from 2022 to 2025. we are seeing somewhat of a leveling off in the number. But what we are seeing are the number of individuals who are experiencing homelessness are experiencing it for a longer period of time.
Mm.
And we're also seeing that an increase in the number of individuals who were reporting challenges associated with substance use and mental health issues. So what that tells us is folks are out there longer and it's getting more complicated. And whether or not it's the length of time homeless is leading to substance use or mental health conditions, or whether or not substance use and mental health conditions are exacerbating their homeless condition, either way, the strategy here has to be timely connections to care to start to address the next step, which would be how do we get you into a sheltered setting? How do we get you into housing? If we can't address the immediate crisis in front of them, no amount of housing will be able to help them successfully transition into housing.
And what one just extraordinary challenge, and I don't know that anybody has found a great answer for it, is how do we reach out to people who are resistant to either accept services that would help them to get off the streets and are sometimes even resistant to emergency shelter?
Right. It's a great question. And Pima County, our area, is not the only one wrestling with ways to successfully connect people to care. One of the examples that we've seen nationally and even here locally demonstrated is a multidisciplinary approach where it's not just land managers or just outreach workers, but it is supported by behavioral health and even substance experts, people who understand, have lived experience in addiction, lived experience in homelessness. So when you go through a multidisciplinary approach, meaning multiple hands, multiple areas of expertise, multiple eyes and factors to look at it, it goes a lot. It can improve the connection to care, but it's also about having the time to take. To build a relationship with some folks. Sometimes it takes a matter of one or more touch with an individual, one or more conversation before they'll be willing to accept services. It can still be a challenge, however, right? So accepting services, even treatment, is still a voluntary. It's still voluntary. There's nothing that compels or empowers any jurisdiction to force somebody into treatment or force someone to accept shelter. So we have to really make sure that our strategies become as flexible and as dynamic as what we're seeing in the data and in the persistence that we're encountering.
Well, I really appreciate that you are the person leading this work for us. Uh, what have we not talked about during this interview regarding the work of your office or some of the challenges that our community is facing that you wanted to share with me and with the folks tuning in?
That's a boy. How long do we have? Broadly speaking, I would say that the challenges that are set forth for our community are maybe even more significant with changes at the federal level. So we know that in the last 24 hours, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has released their most recent notice of funding opportunity, and there will be some significant changes. I'm still myself very early in the review of the full application. There will be summaries that will be provided within the early days of next week that will help us really start to get our arms around what those changes mean for our overall homeless programming and how will we have to be able to pivot to ensure that we're not seeing increases in homelessness as people have lost access to programs. So connections and multidisciplinary strategies are going to be incredibly important. Our partnerships are going to be incredibly important. Our ability to lean in and be curious about solutions is going to be incredibly important. That is the one thing that I know that our community does very well. That is the one thing that I am most heartened by is that locally we have seen demonstrations of our community coming together in untenable circumstances to address insurmountable challenges or what have seemed to be insurmountable challenges. So that gives me some hope. The other piece I would just say is that I can appreciate that that when individuals see an individual experiencing homelessness, they don't always know what to do. So the guidance that we like to give the community is that when you see an in progress criminal activity, right? So that's threats to person, to property, including trespass on private property. That is a call to 911. It is very important that when you see criminal behavior, you call 911. Additionally, I would say that we are getting into the colder time of year as well. We are going to see increases in warming fires in areas that are dry and vegetated. So when individuals see things that look like they are fires in places that aren't intended to be fire areas, to please make sure to also notify first responders, right? Because we want to make sure that we're keeping people safe both in those encampment settings as well as the general community. And then lastly is if you see someone who you think needs services, right? You don't, it's not necessarily an encampment, but you see someone who maybe could benefit from being connected with an outreach worker, that would be a call to 311. And that also goes for individuals who themselves are looking for resources and support. So if you are experiencing homelessness or you're at risk of experiencing homelessness, dialing 311 is also an option. The other thing for some of our constituents who are in more of the distant parts of the region, they can call the Community and Workforce Development Department front desk, and that's 724-7700. And that telephone number will be that your call will be sent to a resource navigator. So if you're experiencing home repair issues, right? Utility bills that are escalating, need assistance with rent and utility assistance. That would be the telephone number that you could call to get
All
that
right.
support.
Well, Jen Darland, Director of our Office of Housing Opportunities and Homeless Solutions, thank you for all your hard work and dedication. And thanks for joining us today. That's going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.